Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! And video game news. Unfortunately today, because I have a probably broken air conditioner, it was running non-stop yesterday and yet the house is barely a degree cooler than the outside. I've got a repairman coming in a couple hours, so I won't have time to really play any Yu-Gi-Oh! Today at all. So today we're just going to kind of burn through the news. And particularly since it was super hot yesterday and it's super hot right now, I'm definitely not in the shape physically or mentally to be making footage anyways. But we'll try and power through it without complaining too much. Speaking of complaining, we have a couple of things on Yu-Gi-Oh! We'll look at before we jump almost completely into the news. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel has won the Webby Awards. This is a crucial announcement, effectively, for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because, and Konami in general, because almost every generous game would give some kind of reward for this. And if the people who supported the game and played the game, the players of the game, the fans of the game, aren't rewarded when a game wins an acclaim from reviewers, or even if fans were voting on the Webbing Awards. I'm not sure how the Webbing Awards even work, whether fans could have voted for it or not. It doesn't really matter. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel would not have been considered one bit if nobody played the game. So the players deserve to be included in some kind of celebration. How included is going to be the crucial decision here. If it's 0, then Konami is Konami and Konami is the worst. If we get a pathetic 100 gems or less, Konami is Konami and Konami's not quite as bad as the worst, but almost the worst. Like, theoretically here, the right amount, I think, would be at least 1,000 gems and maybe a special title, because titles don't take anything to make. So if we could say like Webby Awards winner or something like that as a title, or congratulations as a title, would be acceptable. Yep, Konami is Konami and Konami is the worst, apparently. There's no reward whatsoever for this. Won first place in the People's Voice category, which seems like people voted for it. So all you get is a thank you and a notification, and that's it. They knew they were nominated. At the second you thought you were even a contender or knew you were nominated, there should have been some kind of reward. And then we've got here an example of people putting a lot more focus. I mean, sure, it is nice when people say thank you and have manners, but that's kind of the basics that should be expected, particularly from a company that theoretically wants you to spend tons of money, $64 for gems, although in fairness, this game really doesn't need that. Let's just double check. There's nothing here in the gift box. They've criminally underused the idea of gift boxes anyways. As far as friend lists, that's still totally a stupid system. As far as missions go, there's no special mission. Yeah. We'll double check in the shop just to see if there's something new that they would have hidden away, but yeah, you could have given at least some legacy bonus packs. That would have hurt them none to give 10 legacy bonus packs. Let's see, what do we get new here? This and this. Yeah, so it's definitely not generous. Now, do I have enough rage within me to want to jump across to some other game? Not really. The Harry Potter Magic Awakened game is a PC installer, so it's not on Steam. So instead of installing it on my computer, first I'm going to install the cell phone version of it and see what the cell phone version really feels like and just do a small evaluation, which should probably be a quick look, come to think of it. But also I guess maybe I'll have some extra time. I don't know, I might reverse that decision. It would make a lot more sense to install it on the PC version and then do at least a spotlight quick look. Yeah, I don't use the phrase spotlight anymore. We still are very much in the same situation where there's no reason to play ranked for a couple more days or one more day until the new season opens. And then we have this Build-A-Deck trial, and that sounds like that might be something new. They've gotten rid of everything else that disappeared fairly quickly too. You would kind of have expected the Synchro Festival to give you a couple of days to recognize that the Synchro Festival is over. There's been a real inconsistency there too. Like, everything should probably last a week after it is ended. If you haven't come back to the game in a week, then the event Duel disappearing at that point is really the player's fault. But it definitely has not been a week after the Synchro event has ended, and it definitely has been a lot longer than a week with the World Championship qualifiers. Build-A-Deck held. This is one of those ones where you really only want 3 victories. Loaner cards are cards that can be used during an event. Cards with this appearance, the glow around it I guess, can be used in duels even if you do not own them. Loaner cards can't be dismantled. In some events you will not be able to remove loaner cards from decks. So this is a new style of deck, seemingly. And they have this like rental over it, which is probably not the right phrase to use because that does imply to me I'm paying something to rent these. So I have to guess that there's less than the 10,000 cards are playable in this event. But it does seem like there is a decent amount of cards here if you wanted to change this default deck. Although I really would just say here, let's just do this. I assume what's happening here also is that you have the same deck for every player and that they aren't loading in a larger collection of pre-built decks with rental cards for people to play. All right. 30 decks, 30 cards, 12 cards. Save doesn't seem to work. I'm confused. I'm very confused. Why can I not play this? Why can I not just click save? So what am I supposed to do here? Like, let's, I guess, maybe look for an extra card. No, let's look for a trap card. Actually, let's just look to see if we can play Ash Blossom. That would make the most sense. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Save. So now, so you have to add 10 cards to this and 3 cards there. Okay. So then Call of the Grave. Really have to type in the full thing, I think. Okay. Need 5 more cards. And it would be really hard to find like Zodiac cards, would it? 1 here. 1 here. 1 here. 1 there. 1 there. 1 there. 1 there. See, can I have more? That gets you to the 40. Can I have more than 15 extra cards? Or am I limited? Let's see, ZU. Looking for Zeus now. Here we are. AA-ZEUS. Okay. So we'll throw in that. Extra deck can't contain more than 15 cards, so we need to get rid of this one, and then this one, and then save. I don't hate this idea, per se, that you are really being pushed to build a deck, but they're limiting you down to just making a small deck. Of course, at a certain level, you could just make a gameplay mode where you only have 10 cards and 5 extras, instead of pushing people to still play that 40 card and 15 extra style of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the standard style of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I could see also why it wouldn't be very as helpful if people got very familiar with playing some new simplified Yu-Gi-Oh! That had only 10 cards, and at a certain point you're playing something like Marvel Snap at that point if you only have 10 cards and 5 extras. And Marvel Snap doesn't even have extras. So it's not really the best comparison. Or a one-for-one comparison. But the problem you have here is that your vast majority of your cards that we've been given here, I have no idea what they do. I didn't even look at them. Seems like this person's playing basically the same deck, and it's a lot of dice rolling mechanics. So we activate this, add a dimension dice card. Not sure I should have activated that card. can't summon anything else other than this card. So then you're tribute summoning this to bring in, I guess, this guy? And I guess the hope here is that this guy's ability this time rolls higher than whatever this guy did. But you didn't. So, I guess you tribute that. Maybe put this on the field instead. Okay, so I should have put that on the field first, activated its ability, then summoned one of these guys for more attack, but whatever. Increase, get lucky on the roll there and gain 500 attack. It doesn't seem like a terrible outcome. Here we have YouTube Gaming doing a Curb Your Enthusiasm with Kirby. Once again, kind of showing that YouTube Gaming on Twitter in particular doesn't really have anything to do as a job and is just grasping at straws to be cool with the kids. Which, let's be honest here, even if your average fan of Kirby, which I'm not sure it is a 35-year-old white male, for lack of a better guess, does a Kirby fan really think that there's anything cutesy or smart by mentioning Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I think is a great comedic, very dirty show that's HBO exclusive, so it's not even really as well seen. Maybe you can see some old seasons on some streaming services. But yeah, there's just no connection there. And even this image here of having a pink background and a white and a black character, Shadow, really doesn't have anything to do with Curb Your Enthusiasm or Kirby. And then here they have a continued curb ball. Again, Kirby being a baseball. Kirby being able to emulate things is his main gimmick for the most part since his second game. I don't think it was even in the first game, but it's not really relevant to any of the newest Kirby games. Here we have one just called Curb, which is him pretending to be a curb. But yeah, this has nothing really to do with Kirby or Nintendo. I'm sure Nintendo doesn't appreciate even being mentioned and in such a way because they want to control their advertising completely. And meanwhile, YouTube Gaming could really benefit by putting out just stats of how many gamers streamed on YouTube per month, which they never do, or just basic tips and tricks. As far as that goes, just help overall would be very beneficial instead of them trying to advertise YouTube gaming, which itself is a dead product. Speaking of dead products, here we have this dual trial. Unless you drastically change your deck, you're going to have to learn those 30 cards out of 40 and play that strategy. And the extra cards I threw in really aren't likely to ever show up. So, and notably, there isn't really a collection of 10 cards that just work amazingly well with any other 30 cards. Ash Blossom, Call of the Grave do work pretty well in any card, but that's about it. Let's see. Devolver Digital has put out a fake apology, I believe, to advertise Sludge Life 2, your standard black background, white text apology. You can assume without actually having to read all of it that it is a fake apology because there are these parentheticals here, I think that's the right word, that are jokes, and then at brackets a company here, and then at the end it says buy Sludge Life 2. So that is probably some good criticism of what has become far too common amongst game companies, putting out these apologies on Twitter and other sites. Because it often doesn't mean anything, and it often is just nonsense. But yeah, it's better for Devolver Digital to lampoon that than it is to continue to try and have their Devolver Direct joke shows, which I think they should get rid of. I think if they are always going to have games to announce, but their most recent game they announced in particular really just highlights how those lampooning shows don't make sense with there not being an E3 in existence to lampoon anymore. And it would have been better for them to just announce the game that they were coming out with, because I doubt very many people will even remember the name. I don't even remember the name of the game. I think it started with a V, and it was this little mouse-like creature with a giant hand, and then they were gaslighting everybody into thinking that character always existed and was this mascot from the past that everybody loved, when it was a brand new character. But yeah, I don't remember the name of that game, nor did the game look interesting. And that's the other problem with Devolver Digital games, is that they've gone too weird in their actual game releases, and they would do better just releasing games and trying to be a little bit more mature, finding a nice split where they actually announce games and then have maybe just an April Fool's Day style presentation once a year, if they must do that. I'm not sure they even must do that, though. They probably would be better just to go full, slightly professional, willing to make a joke on Twitter or a site like that here and there, but not wasting finances to make entire video skits, because they are now just really coming off as a bunch of improv actors who pretend like they publish games, but really they just want you to watch their terrible improv. Here's an interesting story. We have a confirmation of actual censorship / curation that I'm not sure too many people are going to complain about, and certainly Valve is doing it from the perspective of where their legal protections and rights may be. Valve will not publish Steam titles that feature AI-generated content unless they can provide specific evidence that they have all the necessary rights. I think it's important to not just assume that's a blanket statement. Says the company told one Steam developer it cannot ship games for which the developers do not have all of the necessary rights. Which, at a certain point, this is perhaps Valve establishing a basis to stop even more games from coming to Steam, but also it's retroactively trying to imply that their nastiness that they reached out to Nintendo to stop the Dolphin emulator from being on Steam was justified. They're effectively being allowed or establishing a rule to justify their actions they've already taken. Now, nobody generally likes AI, anything in their games, but there also has been this large trend of people taking art that some of which was not actually made using any kind of AI art generator and calling it AI art. There is some subset of particularly Asian, Japanese artists who were getting views by highlighting that it was AI art. And yeah, the Streisand effect certainly helped that, in that people were hating on AI art, so then more people were going to look at AI art to potentially hate on AI art. So it became the snake eating its own tail. And there definitely were people who were making just regular art and then relabeling it, or they were taking old art and relabeling it as AI art. Notably, a major anime hentai website banned AI art submissions on their forums too, and we have yet to get to the point where some of the bigger animated sites like DeviantArt have fully banned submissions of AI art. DeviantArt, on the other hand, wanted to create their own AI art generator, so they definitely would not ban it until they abandon that concept, which they probably won't. More general photo services and picture hosting services like Imager and PhotoBucket probably would have a harder time having any kind of rules, let alone ones that specifically banned AI art. I wouldn't be surprised if some laws come in and you can just start, companies are forced to have a flagging system on photos where you say this is AI art generated, and at some point a photo being flagged as AI art generated should be removed. I don't know how much you could put the genie back in the bottle and how dangerous a system like that could be, where all of a sudden you could claim that somebody else's art is AI art generated so that it gets taken down. That's basically as bad as the DMCA, but we do have the DMCA, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of laws put in place like that. But for now, in the short term, we know at least Steam is not going to go with AI art. This almost certainly only affects people mostly making adult games, slide puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, visual novels. As soon as you start to get it into anything that is even slightly complicated, like an RPG Maker game, if you're actually using RPG Maker, you already have characters that you can quickly add, so using AI art would not help. AI art in general is just not very consistent, so as far as I can tell, you can't really find one that sticks within a style. And really where AI would start to help as far as art generation is if you had all the master materials for, say, Final Fantasy 13, every single image from that, and you put only those master images into an AI engine, then you potentially could get new characters that were in the same style, and that would be great. The problem there is that the technology is just not efficient. It's not enough images. if you were to say take every single frame from a My Neighbor Totoro intro, for example, and throw that into an AI art generator, that's probably not enough frames. It's not enough individual pictures for every frame. 60 frames per second, 2 hours long. So 60 times 60 times 2 is probably not enough to make enough of a base. And that's where I think the algorithm is going to have to be improved. These algorithms are going to have to be improved for it to really make sense. But yeah, we're not anywhere near that, and it's very possible that the math just will never actually work out that way. So you might be able to find some very long-running series, TV shows, animated shows, One Piece manga. If you scanned every single frame into that, you might get enough inputs in there. But then again, if you scanned every single panel frame from the One Piece manga, it may not be diverse enough either with the current algorithm. So most of that data may not ever be used. Which, yeah, that's just to really say AI art is very much in its infancy, and we have yet to really find a way to make that beneficial for society as a whole. I'm not even sure that AI is really proving to be beneficial for individual companies. It's beneficial to scammy people. That's the only people it seems to benefit at the moment, is people that want to make garbage content that they don't care if it looks accurate or good in any way. They just want to run ads on their website, which this is late stage capitalism kind of also to be blamed, in that since everybody's goal in the world is just to make profits, and the only way to make profits on the internet, or one of the easiest ways to make profit on the internet, is to get people to watch ads, we've created this whole system that is just trying to make people purchase more and more when people have less and less buying power because of inflation and just low wages. The whole system falls apart. And yeah, I'll do my almost weekly plug, if not 3 times weekly plug, for universal basic income. If such a thing did exist, then people probably wouldn't feel as big of a need to purchase anything else, and then we wouldn't have a society of people trying to sell things to make more money. There will always be people with a hope to be rich, or who actually achieve to be rich mentality, and that will always try to make more and more money. But as they get fewer and fewer people willing to buy products and be shopaholics, I think there is definitely a case where a lot of people shop as actual mental therapy because they are being so traumatized by working jobs. As soon as you start to get into that slower mentality lifestyle where you're working maybe 5 hours a week at most, and you're doing something that you're actually passionate about and actually want to do, all of a sudden you don't feel the need to buy the next perfume or just frivolous purchase that wouldn't matter, or something that you would have never even considered purchasing otherwise. Like, I personally can attest to that the more I was overworked, the less mental defenses I have had in the past to advertising and purchasing things that I really wouldn't have considered or didn't really need. Moving on, Niantic has canceled projects and closed its LA office to prioritize on Pokemon Go. Niantic will put most of its attention to the Pokemon Go to bring in revenue, so it seems to me like eventually Pokemon Go will become even more pay to win, have even more microtransactions in it. Meanwhile, Niantic is just proving themselves to be completely a failure as a long-term company in that they have nothing that they're working on in the future. They are apparently, quote, moving away from in-house development going forward, so they are just going to be a shell company for Pokemon Go and just try and take as much money. So all creativity is out the window for Niantic. They're not going to bother to ever create anything new other than things that would immediately be sold on Pokemon Go. They also are shutting down NBA All World, which released in January, and they've fully canceled development of Marvel World of Heroes, which it definitely would have made a lot of sense to stick with the Marvel game. That's how Niantic could exist in 10 years. Whereas at this point, the name Niantic and Pokemon Go may exist in 10 years, but it is basically going to be a shell company and a joke. Nobody's going to expect any new products from them. And I imagine just as time goes by, fewer and fewer people will play Pokemon Go, and nothing really stops Nintendo from making something similar to Pokemon Go, or somebody else to make something similar to Pokemon Go without Pokemon, and that becoming the next big augmented reality walking game, which as a genre I imagine isn't that popular, or isn't going to be popular in the long run. There was an Annapurna Interactive showcase. So they announced a Blade Runner 2023 11th for consoles and several other things, which we'll probably cover one by one in the news. So it's not super necessary to go through all of this. What did catch my eye is this Lorelei and the Laser Eyes trailer, because if this is the same Lorelei of the Devil Came Through Here, the Cat Lady trilogy, then we've got something interesting in that Annapurna Interactive might be using being the publisher for that, when it has been Harvester 7 before this point, Harvest 7 or something like that. We also have a video game developer.com article that says Canada has voiced its disapproval of the Microsoft Activision merger, although it seems like if Canada was even really a consideration, it would have been mentioned before this point. I don't know if maybe Canada's regulatory board is just too weak, or what. It says here under the fold that Canada's regular board has revealed it does not in fact support Microsoft's attempted merger, but they seem to not have done any of the legalese, or maybe they just don't have a legal basis to potentially stop them. And then it really feels like it would have been very useful for somebody to have just taken a world map and put a pin on the map where every regulatory body is, and put a pin on the map where every company in that country is. Like, I imagine Activision Blizzard has like one Quebec studio in Canada that might be a little bit painful if they shut it down, but it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, the vast majority of the intellectual property and whatever talent is actually left at Activision Blizzard, of which there really isn't that much talent that I think Microsoft even cares to own or cares about, all of that is in the United States. So if the FTC stops the merger, that's a big deal. If any other country stopped the merger, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Noticeably, we have pretty much forgotten about the fact that the CMA from the UK also blocked the merger, and there's been just no political court cases or anything around that so far. So it's just, we've had no update around it at all. They did say they were going to challenge that. Here's that game Lorelei and the Laser Eyes Maze trailer. Puzzle game due out in 2023. Let's see. it is probably more beneficial to just go to the Steam page. Although I'm not going to make a YouTube short around it. Annapurna Interactive is happening with the summer sale. With my air conditioner being broken, I guess I'm not buying anything in the summer sale. Yeah, this doesn't quite feel like this is part of the Lorelei series. And the name Lorelei can't obviously be copyrighted. And if it was part of the Devil Came Through Here series, you'd think there would be a link somewhere around this to the Cat Lady or Lorelei, the most recent game. The art style isn't quite the same either, in that there's 3D and less comic book pencil sketch drawn. You can see this developer, Simogo, has made other games like Sayonara Wild Hearts. I wouldn't be surprised if what happens is that the Lorelei in the laser eyes gets changed. It gets its name changed, because that is going to potentially cause a little bit of confusion, but maybe not that much confusion. Like the Lorelei game and the Cat Lady game, popular enough, but not that popular that people would potentially get confused. But noticeably, I did get confused just now. I really thought this might be a new game in the Cat Lady trilogy, technically called the Devil Came Through Here trilogy. We have another GameDeveloper.com article here in that Kickstarter has pulled back on previously announced blockchain plans. Remember, it really was only about 6 months ago that everybody was talking about blockchain before AI happened. And so it really goes to show how the speed and the ferocity around companies jumping on bandwagons to potentially raise their valuation amongst their shareholders is increasing, and the advertisement around it certainly is increasing too. Another one, speaking of valuations, to mention would be Reddit, as of today, has shut down its API or charged way too much for API access, and in part shut down access to not safe for work games. And so Reddit has just been devalued by a valuation company like Fidelity, I believe, a second time because of this. So yeah, if Reddit really does go and do an initial public offering, they probably aren't going to make as much money as they'd hoped. And an interesting fact, that they certainly were gambling that the valuations would still go up with just raised API fees, and that the protests, which have mostly failed, would have no effect. But it definitely seems like even amongst the shareholders, the protests have highlighted problems with Reddit, or Reddit's leadership, or Reddit's entire concept of having almost all of its content moderated by unpaid labor, and not really offering a good product as a base API program, to the point where all the moderators were using other software like Apollo. And then here's that same story. Pokemon Go and Niantic is reportedly laying off 230 staff and canceling its Marvel game. We have another game verified for the Steam Deck. Oh yeah, and I guess I forgot to mention that the Steam Deck, as part of the summer sale, is up to 20% off. You are certainly going to gamble here a little bit, but not that much, that buying a Steam Deck this year might get replaced next summer with a Steam Deck version 2. Every summer sale that happens where the Steam Deck is not getting replaced with a new version or even an upgraded model is establishing what the refresh cycle is going to be around the Steam Decks, which is, yeah, obviously not going to be super fast. You could have definitely seen a case where Valve got greedy and every year they would have tried to put a refreshed model, and that there would have been a 2022 model, a 2023 model, and in each of those models there would be either slightly changed components, perhaps to make it cheaper and increase the profits for Valve, or slightly changed layouts of the hardware, or slightly improved components. Eventually, you can't go forever. Not even a company as big as Valve ordering a lot of these. You can't go forever on the same components because the chips themselves will stop being made, and that happens pretty quickly, like 4, 6, 8 years. Like, a chip manufacturer is not going to continue to make the exact same chips, particularly if you're the only people buying it. There are certainly some chips that are used just forever, but the processes to make chips improve and get cheaper. So yeah, I would lean towards the Steam Deck potentially being updated next year. If not next year, I would definitely think the year after that. If they don't update it in the next 2 years, then that's a bit of a concern. I still very much are in the position where I don't really love the layout of the controls on the Steam Deck. I really would prefer the thumbsticks here, and just to get rid of the touchpads completely in favor of just using a touchscreen. But I've never really used the touchpad, so maybe there's some actual logic to that. But it would be an awkward grip, certainly. I also would prefer it to be an Xbox layout, which I know that visually doesn't make any sense. And I guess PlayStation is more popular, so having the analog sticks in the exact same place would be more in line with the analog with the PlayStation idea. It also might help, even in today's day and age, for the Steam Deck to have a Japanese version where the A, B, and Y and X's are reflected and replaced. Might be just beneficial to get rid of those labels altogether, but it's also somewhat helpful for new players to still have those labels. It would be cleaner, certainly, if those were just buttons. And yeah, there's not even really that much as far as technology that you would want improved on a new Steam Deck. Better battery, better power performance when needed, but also better battery savings when not needed. The Steam Deck, with its screen size that is always going to be somewhat limited, isn't ever really going to be the right thing to play something that should be a 4K model. I don't know if you can really do this, if you could mirror your computer screen to the Steam Deck. It would certainly help me when I'm trying to read small text, if I could just pick up the Steam Deck at any point and read the text with the screen being a lot closer. Obviously, we'd want to see smaller bezels. Audio is going to be fairly limited. You can't really do too much with that. I don't know if you can connect a Bluetooth headphones to a Steam Deck. That should be a feature that you could do even now. Video, unless they're going to go crazy with some kind of like 3D video, there's not anything that you really can improve other than just a slightly better screen, slightly brighter screen. It might make sense to have a camera on it. You could always add a camera to the USB-C at the top, but it also might just be beneficial to have a front and back camera by default installed for potential augmented reality games, which they definitely dropped the ball on that idea. Although, by not having a camera on it, you also have parents rest assured that they're not having their kids take pictures of themselves or having people hack Steam Decks to look at kids. I'd almost prefer if you could remove these like Joy-Cons. I think the detachable controllers concept isn't the worst idea. So if they went for more of a Switch concept in the new Steam Deck where you could remove the controllers and just have a screen, and then these controllers would Bluetooth or wirelessly connect to each other, that'd be great. If a Steam Deck, this is really crazy, a Steam Deck 2 could also act as a home hub of some sort, which you probably could already install some kind of Alexa or Google Assistant into a Steam Deck and install some kind of program to talk to it. But if you could have the better integration, so when it's sitting on a dock, it would pop up with your calendar and pop up with messages and could just act as like a Sonos speaker. If you could add those value add things and say, hey, this is not just a PC version of a Switch, but it is also somewhat like a Google Home Hub, or Google Home Hub would be the closest comparisons there. That would be great. It'd also be nice if there was an easy way to run virtualization and run Android phone apps on the Steam Deck. That probably could be done now, technically, but they'd have to focus on that, and I don't know if Valve really has the resources to focus on making their SteamOS also have a VM that runs Android so that you could install an Android app and play mobile games. But they should focus on that for sure, because also the Steam app on cell phones should be capable of purchasing and installing and playing mobile phone games too. Anyways, like, that's a lot to say about the Steam Deck, and very little to say around Coral Island, which looks like it is just a Stardew Valley style farming game. Genshin Impact has a new update with the anime girls in bikinis swimming in water. So the summer heat thought is certainly part of some of these Japanese game updates more than anything else, any other games. Apparently, the anniversary of Manhole came out. Manhole being the first game that's basically barely a game. I don't think it technically is a game, because while you can interact with things, I don't think that there is actually a way to win. There's no credits. It is instead more in case like a labyrinth where you just go in different directions and you always end up in the same place at the end. It was designed to be on like Apple II computers using the HyperCard software in libraries for kids to just play around with it, and you didn't really need to reset the game when somebody new wanted to play it or anything like that. The next kid could just jump on it and play with it until they're bored and then walk away, which would have been very helpful for librarians who would have known nothing about computers back then, and probably there's still some librarians that even now know very little about computers, even though computers and librarians should go together very easily. And nothing new from Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which means this next tab, let's see, probably has nothing. I tried to figure out what is causing so many of these tabs to unload, and I'm not really doing a good job of figuring that out. So yeah, the summer sale is happening. Let's just do a quick verification of what is going on here. A lot of games are on sale. There was definitely a game I was thinking about. Harry Potter's Hogwarts Legacy is a game that I wish somebody might gift me, because it would be definitely beneficial for me to play it. It wouldn't replace a card game, but it would be beneficial to play. We have Danganronpa Volume 3 on sale, which I don't know if I even own Volume 2. Noticeably, it doesn't seem like they're doing any kind of games. The dock is also on sale, but it is fairly expensive even at that, for $71.20. So you explore deals and you get trading cards through the Discovery Queue. They're still pushing the Discovery Queue. They've done nothing to really improve the Discovery Queue, but in fairness, I will say it has, for the most part, accomplished its minimal goals, which is to find some way to put new games in front of people's eyes. That being said, my own YouTube shorts, which are automated, I think now has evolved with what is available, and my system, if I can pat myself on the back, I think is better than the Discovery Queue. Because my system is, if you're watching YouTube shorts like you would be watching videos on TikTok, where videos are just getting thrown in front of you, Hogwarts Legacy here, $47.99, 20% off. Spider-Man Remastered is another game that would make a lot of sense to play. Even Jedi Survivor is one that would make a lot of sense to play. Why is that not on the wish list? Lego Star Wars, $16.49. Let's check that. I might actually pull the trigger on that. Spider-Man Miles Morales. Yeah. The experience to do the Discovery Queue is an experience where you have to go to Steam on the Steam's front page, and inherently this is the problem with a lot of websites. Even Amazon.com's website has this problem, in that people don't want to and really shouldn't have to go to the front page of something to engage with a website. It should be that there is a better system with deep links and direct searches. So when somebody searches, say, the name of 6 Days in Fallujah, they should be able to get to that game, and then there should be a way when they search that, or when they search, say, NBA 2K23, which is not in the Discovery Queue, there should still be a one-click way to get to the Discovery Queue from each website, each page, which would make each page full of an ad, but that really is the better system. See, if I type Steam Deck and it takes me to the Steam Deck website here, how would I be promoted towards the Discovery Queue? Not very easily. Instead, you have a different top 100 games played on the Steam Deck, which is more relevant, but yeah. Now, it is fair to say that I have some ad blocking enabled on Steam, so it is possible that there might be a link somewhere to a Discovery Queue, but I don't recall there ever being like a Discovery Queue right at the bottom. I could see the constant main page where you just scroll down, down, and down on the main page forever, and it constantly gives you more pages to add. I could see that just being replaced with the discovery queue, because that's effectively what you're doing anyways. But I could also just see them doing something more with the discovery queue overall. Oh, I see why Jedi Survivor's not on my wish list. So if you wanted the deluxe edition, you would have to buy the $20 one, but if you want all of the character collections, the Saga Galactic edition, you would have to buy $24 worth of stuff. Otherwise you're going to end up buying a whole bunch of DLC, which the DLC is also on sale, but you can see there's quite a bit of it. Particularly for kids, it makes all the sense in the world to potentially purchase this. Of course, I also am screwing up my web pages if I'm going to start shopping. Did we ever see the update for the birthday on Sonic Frontiers? I know for the Switch it has come out, but as far as the update being a DLC thing, or the update being talked about on PC, they don't seem to have put an update in the description. It says the game may be updated over time. But yeah, it's not worth making a YouTube short around the game that isn't going to highlight that. Then we've got a visual novel here, which looks like it is inspired by Ace Attorney. Alright, so then video game news from Video Games Chronicles. That's what we'll move on to next. July's Xbox games with gold titles have been announced. Do we have a nice list here? No. Hopefully Gamatsu will tell us. Subscribers can claim Darkwood and when the pass was around next month. The next free Epic Games Store title has been confirmed. Grime will replace Dungeon of Nalabekam, the Amulet of Chaos. Baldur's Gate 3 release date has been brought forward on PC and delayed on the PS5. So, if a release date changes, should I make a new YouTube short around it? Well, part of the problem here is that even if I were to do that, it would be hard to point out that the date has changed, and it would be hard to keep track of all of that. Also, Video Games Chronicle is not good about having links to Steam pages, so really can't get to Baldur's Gate 3 easily from this article. One thing I do want to experiment with when it's cooler and when my air conditioner is working again is the idea that that there is a option to change the zoom on Firefox so that it would only change the size of text and not the size of pictures. So I should experiment with that and click that checkbox. It's really just a checkbox. I wish there was some more options that weren't hidden. I know there are more options, but they're all hidden in special about pages of Firefox. But yeah, it would be very nice if you could tweak it so that there was a separate zoom for text versus a separate zoom for pictures. In particular, if all of a sudden I could make the text line up here. I know without the ad blocking there's an ad here, and that's why there is this whole different column. So I'm drastically trying to change what the page looks like, but maybe I can pull that off. But there was just not time today to experiment with that before I streamed. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the Football Manager boss claims that Jim Ryan's claim that the Xbox game is no, the Football Manager boss challenges Jim Ryan's claim that the Xbox Game Pass is, quote, value destructive, which inherently this is what I also said, is that there's been a lot of people that have come out and said that they love Xbox Game Pass and that it worked for them. Now, notably, that's not major AAA game publishers. It's people that make AA games and single A games that all of a sudden are seeing 2 or 3 times the number of player base, which potentially benefits them, but also they are getting money up front by being on Xbox Game Pass for free in a lot of situations. Yeah, I don't know if there actually is any game on Xbox Game Pass that costs extra money. I don't think there is. I don't think it works that way. So the Sports Interactive Miles Jackson says being on Game Pass is, quote, all very sunny, end quote. And we could go into more details, but I think there are several people who will be willing to go on record to say that they have enjoyed Xbox Game Pass. Football Manager in particular is kind of a great example. It's not a AAA game, it's a management game, and it almost certainly got more players to play it by being offered for free or for the price of a subscription fee. When you compare this to like Netflix too, there's a vast majority of video content on Netflix that people would never have paid even a penny for to watch, but because they're paying that subscription fee for Netflix, they're willing to watch it. I definitely would be very iffy to pay even a penny to watch a bunch of Korean dramas, but a lot of the Korean dramas on Netflix are actually very good. Let's see. Moving on, Wildcard Football is an arcade-style American football game by NBA 2K Playground Studio. So, NBA 2K announcing a new style of a new game football series, perhaps not using NFL labeling, which probably saves them a lot in the licenses. It also seems like it's going to be a lot more cartoony and try to be kid friendly, and probably targeting more African Americans than usual. The game oddly is not going to be published by 2K, and let's see if we look at the announcement trailer blurred, see if we can get a general idea of what it's going to be. With the phrase wild card, I almost wonder if it is a card-based game. Otherwise, it might just be something closer to what a modern take on NES football would have been, which that was really the only football game I ever really enjoyed, is because that was purely just playing strategies and skills and maneuvers. Looking at this though, that is not what this is. Interesting. They do have a character with Kaepernick on the back, and I know that is a football player's name, so they may be licensing individual people's likenesses and names. But yeah, this clearly has some kind of magic in it and some kind of special effects, and I feel like this is probably like an attempt at doing something like Blood Bowl without having the goblins and orcs in it. A higher action experience, which might be very appealing to a lot of people who are semi-football fans but don't want to get into longer strategic experiences that you might run into as far as you're simulating actual football games in most football games, most football video games. Don't care about their podcast. Pokemon Go, Niantic, we already talked about. Lush Foil Photography Sim will let players explore real-life locations in Unreal Engine 5. I don't know if this is particularly a actual game, though. Yeah, if anything, this feels like this is just an asset flip game trying to advertise itself like it isn't an asset flip game. And yes, I suppose there is potential room for a walkabout type game where you walk in different places and look around. And this is offering 8 locations, which isn't terrible, and licensed music, which can be helpful. But at the end of the day, it still would just be a walking simulator with no real interactivity, so I can't really call it a game. Annapurna's Ghost Bike is the next game from the creator of the cult favorite Nidhogg, which, okay, this doesn't look anything like Nidhogg, but also that's probably a good thing because Nidhogg and Nidhogg 2 could only be so varied before it just becomes repetitive. Nidhogg also is a game that really only worked if you had 4 friends playing with you on a fairly regular basis. It almost certainly was one of those games that was hyped by people like Giant Bomb because the friends at Giant Bomb at the time were all playing each other, whereas your average gamer probably doesn't have 4 people that they can regularly get together to play a new game. You might have a group of friends that you all get together and play NBA 2K or say the Halo, something like that, but Call of Duty. But yeah, to have 4 friends all willing to try something brand new is a big difference. The game Stray is coming to Xbox in August, which stops it from being a PC and PlayStation exclusive at that point. Let's see, it launched on PC, and at some point I thought it went to PlayStation. Did it never actually come to PlayStation? I guess that would change the narrative a little bit, but not by much. They have announced a Blade Runner 2033 Labyrinth as its first internally developed game, which is very much late from Blade Runner 2033, the movie. And if anything, it feels like Harrison Ford is really just trying to cash in as much as possible in his late life. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't a scenario where in a few years we realize that he's got some degenerative disease, or he knows he's dying for some reason, and so he's trying to make as much money as possible for his family. Although I'm not sure if Harrison Ford even really has a family. If he does, he's done a great job of keeping him out of the limelight. Harrison Ford is also in a Apple TV Plus TV series called Shrinking, not to be confused with the movie Shrinking, where it follows a therapist, and so you have a shrink. The teaser is showing the lady who was using this weird device to scrub memories into Blade Runners, into the androids. And so she was putting her own memories into the androids to make them kind of feel like they were human. I guess that's a slight spoiler for the movie. But yeah, I don't know how exactly this game even would play. And I don't know if there's really any reason to put any faith in Annapurna Interactive in making their first game. It'll probably be as good as any other company's first game, which is to say not that good. Baldur's Gate 3 Studio says it may have to compromise to get it on Xbox. The holdup is due to split-screen co-op running poorly on the Series S, which is an interesting statement that someone is saying publicly, to say that the Xbox Series X is just too weak by these overly pushed modern standards for hardware, and unoptimized engines and unoptimized hardware in general. It would really benefit everybody if we just did not get a new generation console for a very long time. Like, there is speculation that the next Nintendo console is going to be on the level of power of an Xbox One. So, still really behind PS4, Xbox One level of processing power. And so it would. I don't know how the mergers, if the Activision Blizzard mergers and other mergers went through, would potentially allow Xbox or PlayStation to stop making new hardware. If anything, they're going to slow down on making new hardware just because the price is getting too expensive to be reasonable, and because there's just been a part shortage. But in the long run, if the part shortage did stop the next generation consoles from coming out for an extra 2 to 4 years, that might let everybody as a programmer just settle in and be able to figure out how to optimize their games to work with that kind of hardware and optimize their game for that hardware. Inherently, it feels like Unreal Engine 5 in particular needs updates and optimizations to just its shader caching, and I'm sure a lot of other features it does. And if the Unreal Engine 5, which is used by a lot of game developers, got improved at the core, if that low-level API programming engine got improved, it might improve automatically a lot of games that are available. Now, old games might get slightly better. Of course, that's not really how business works. Every quarter, they have to announce something new, and they have to have new sales. It's highly unlikely that Microsoft and PlayStation would just agree to collude and possibly do something illegal where they don't release a new game either this Christmas or next Christmas. Yeah. And there's really no way Nintendo catches up unless Nintendo makes major leaps. What would really hurt in the short run PlayStation and Microsoft, but benefit gamers in a weird way, is if all of a sudden the next Nintendo console had a virtual machine to run PC games. If all of a sudden the next Nintendo Switch was better than the Steam Deck and it had Nintendo games on it, that would be such an extra sell for less money that Microsoft and PlayStation might have to rethink their whole strategies if all of a sudden there's considerably less of a reason to own a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. Yeah, overall though, that creates a weird situation where this Christmas, I don't know if you would, if you can really recommend any purchasing of any console, even if it's really on sale. I'm gonna have to hurry up here. I blinked and some time has changed. I have only about 30 more minutes before this repairman's supposed to show up, or theoretically. The repairman will probably be a lot later than the earliest time, but I want to be available to him. A week after launch, Crash Team Rumble is struggling on Twitch. The multiplayer spinoff has double-figure viewership, suggesting a lack of interest. I didn't even know it was out, so actually I think I did know this was out because I saw it and then was confused as to what it was and then lost interest in it immediately. An Xbox exclusive Scorn is coming to the PlayStation 5 later this year, which, yeah, exclusives never stay exclusive. Call of Duty's latest anti-cheat update makes cheaters hallucinate imaginary opponents. The game has also removed a separate quicksand anti-cheat effect. Which, yeah. I think they announced that several months ago, and it's just now being implemented, unless a different game announced that. I don't know if any of these things really are going to improve the cheating landscape, if the cheating landscape, for lack of a better definition, even really needs to be improved. Inherently, you have all these multiplayer games, and then almost immediately there's cheating, there's accusations of cheating on these multiplayer games. I don't know why people want to play multiplayer games unless they all want to cheat, and that may very well be the landscape, is that 99.9% of all players actually at one point or another do actually want to cheat in the game, and they want to play effectively with cheaters versus cheaters, because they all want to win. Where if these were just single player experiences, you could manipulate the mechanics of the game so that everybody does win. And inherently, that's my problem with any kind of multiplayer game, even Yu-Gi-Oh! Card games, is that at best case scenario, you get slightly better than a 50% win ratio. Whereas if I'm playing a single player game, I want the win ratio to be in the high 90s to 100%. There's plenty of games I've played where I've never died once, or I've only died once or twice in 60 hours. That's the experience that I want. That's the experience that I think most people want, is that you want to be in control of a movie, and at no point in the movie does James Bond get shot and die and a game over screen come up and then you have to retry. We already kind of talked about this. Sony accidentally revealing confidential Call of Duty player and revenue data. The way they actually reviewed it, I heard some more information about this. As far as how were they poorly redacted, they just took a black marker and ran a line through all of it, which is so people could just see through the black marker. Like it wasn't even a good Sharpie. Almost certainly, I would have assumed that somebody, some high-level lawyer who's never used technology, was taking a black marker and going through it, if not the CEO of Sony. And then they had every expectation that some lackey below that was going to retype that so before it got handed over to the other side. And that never happened, or there was some kind of miscommunication. But it definitely highlights how people are still working with paper way too much. It would have made a lot more sense if they, in this kind of scenario, if Jim Ryan, the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, is sitting around with a bunch of lawyers, it would have made a lot of sense that they were all on a Google Share document on tablets, which I'm sure none of them know how any of that works. And that's where they, if they paid their IT people and listened to their IT people, they would have known how that worked, which they don't ever. But yeah, they would have all been on a Google Share document. They would have all highlighted text and deleted the text directly and put in its place parentheses redacted. And then that would have been printed out and shared, not just somebody quickly highlighting through printed text. But yeah, this is a failure of upper management and lawyers, and this is an exact example of where upper management and lawyers are not these genius people who create jobs and help the economy. They are just a bunch of idiots that happen to get lucky and be in positions of power that they almost certainly don't deserve. And I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but yeah, I have never seen a CEO who actually felt like they deserve to be an intelligent CEO. Just think about it. Bill Gates is apparently sleeping with underage people. We found out Steve Jobs is a complete idiot, taking holistic medicine instead of healing himself, and obsessive about trying to get Chinese factory workers to wear his iconic black turtleneck and jeans. And when he failed on that, just to prove a point, he started wearing it. Frankly, Steve Jobs, I think, may have been autistic. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, any name you can recognize from any company. Was that Martin Shkreli that got thrown in jail for in part raising the insulin prices? I think he got thrown in jail for something else, tax evasion. Wesley Snipes listened to a sovereign citizen and stopped paying all taxes, and I don't think he ever got thrown in jail for that, but he now owes a ton of things. Although in that case, Wesley Snipes is an actor, not a manager or CEO, so that's not a fair example. And weirdly, the actual smart people, I think, are in general smart enough to realize they don't want to be in charge. So there's almost this need for companies and societies to push the smartest people, perhaps the least sociable people, because a lot of managers certainly get into the manager position because they have social manipulation skills and they manipulate people and they can surround themselves with yes men a lot well. Whereas intelligent people tend to not have those social manipulation skills. So I guess if there was an actual test that was forced upon companies, and whoever had the most intelligence of that test was then forced to be the manager, that would probably be a better system. And that might be a better system. One of the rare examples where if all of a sudden an artificial intelligence was actually intelligent and running an entire world or country, the Skynet type software, if all of a sudden it started to evaluate people and say, hey, you're actually good at this, so we're going to put you in this job, you would have more efficiency. Of course, a lot of people would be put in jobs they don't want to do, but I guess the question is, should you be allowed to do the job you want to do if you're actually really bad at it, or should you be forced to do the job you're actually good at? That is definitely a side rant that I do not have time for, though, today, so let's move on. We had already talked about the CEO claiming he'd love to get rid of console exclusives entirely. A 4-minute Pikmin 4 demo is out now, alongside with a 7-minute overview trailer. I believe Pikmin 4 is now available for purchase. Valve is reportedly banning games featuring AI-generated art content. Did we have any real list here? Notice this is also a Reddit post, so if all of a sudden Reddit goes away, we're going to start to see companies like GameDeveloper.com, Video Games Chronicle here, also have less articles because they're going to have to actually seek out articles. The visual picture here says that this is AI art generated, which maybe it was. It definitely feels like it could have been. This girl does not exist is the name of that game. I think almost certainly Valve is going to do a very haphazard filter there and only target things that claim they have AI art in it, whereas stolen art and AI art in games that don't claim they have AI art will almost certainly still be allowed on Steam. And we've seen that stolen games or stolen art in games is not very well dealt with by Valve. As someone who has personally found stolen art in games and flagged it, and then for weeks later, while I went back and checked, still saw the game on sale and informed the proper copyright holders that their art is being stolen, and still seeing the games available for sale for weeks after that. Valve does not seem like they have any interest in acting on things that they don't want to act. So, which this is kind of the problem of Steam and Valve in general, is that there is no real leadership at Valve. It's just a bunch of random faceless people that if they happen to get a bug up their butt to do something, they will do it. But if they don't care about it, it will never get done. Most notably, nobody cares about making Half-Life 3, so that never happens. A job advert appears to confirm that The Sims 5 will be free to play, which probably makes a lot of sense. Sega says it is not open to acquisition talks following Microsoft's interest. The Sonic firm enjoys a close relationship with the Xbox maker, which, yeah, just because there was a list of 100 companies that Microsoft thought about acquiring and Sega was on it doesn't mean any of those 100 companies actually were legitimately open to that. And in particular, the idea of Sega being acquired comes into some major problems with the Japanese government. I think they would consider Sega, if they haven't officially labeled it as a national treasure, they would probably pass some laws to that effect, saying no, we're not going to let a United States company acquire the video game company that nostalgically is loved by a lot of Japanese people. And it's probably better that they wouldn't be acquired anyways. Them working closely together is almost certainly a better outcome, because Sega needs that authority to say no if Microsoft demands something that really doesn't work well for Sega. If all of a sudden Microsoft said, let's put Sonic in Halo, or let's make your Sonic team make Halo Infinite, that's not going to be a good outcome. Moving on, Microsoft's chief financial officer says making Call of Duty exclusive to the Xbox was never discussed. The exec said PlayStation sales were an essential component of the $69 billion deal price. So they're saying they would have only bought Activision Blizzard for $69 billion if the Call of Duty was on the PlayStation. Which I believe that's probably true. I also wouldn't be surprised if they saw this exclusivity argument coming a mile away, and they told all of the managers before they even made the first offer to acquire Activision Blizzard to never discuss exclusivity for Call of Duty, at least. Let's see. July's, quote, free games with Amazon Prime have been revealed. Let's see. Cook Serve Delicious, Neri, Tower of Shirin, Witchwood, and Lunar Axe. Okay. Then that brings us to the Gamatsu articles. Arcadian Atlas launches July 27th for PC and later in 2023 for consoles. Let's see, is this on the fall list? Yes, it is. I think we've already made it. We talked about the Pikmin trailer and demo. Cry Machinia, the third trailer, is available to watch on Gamatsu. Neverwake is now available for Xbox Series alongside a version 1.22 update. Adds new weapons from 5 indie games. Weapons from Dranius, Elkhead, Super UFO Fighter, and more. I don't recognize any of those games. So, I guess this game is very positive, and if there is an update, then there is a reason to make a YouTube short around it. So we will. My Hero Ultra Rumble launches this fall. Update. Let's see, what's the update? New blog post with more information. Noticeably, my auto blur here, I'll make a YouTube short around this since it's not on the fall list, is not activating. So I'm hoping I programmed it right, and the auto blur will kick in when necessary and not before. Although we really don't have time to go through any of the YouTube fall list or the YouTube looking at games on YouTube. I'm probably just gonna have to do all of that off screen. So yeah, it really hasn't been a great couple of weeks for content, being sick and now having air conditioner problems, which maybe the two are slightly connected. I did get a better air filter that's like a top of the line, much thicker air filter that's could have been the problem, and I turned on my fan in my AC to be on all the time to filter the air, and that could be the problem. But I don't know. I don't know if there even is really a problem, if it isn't just the case that it's super hot outside. Pups Purrs Pet Shop launches August 10th in the West. Let's see, is this for what console though? Nintendo Switch? Okay. Yeah, looks kind of cute. Who's publishing it though? Access Games? Not perhaps the biggest recognizable name, but doesn't look immediately terrible. The Famitsu sales have been updated to include Final Fantasy XVI for the PlayStation 5, now overtaking Tears of the Kingdom, although its total sales will have to be pretty high for a few weeks before it takes the total sales of Tears of the Kingdom over. And as far as other things, Sonic Origins Plus is in the 22nd spot, selling less than 2,000 copies for the Nintendo Switch. PlayStation 5 is outselling the OLED model, and if it stays consistent like that, then eventually the PlayStation 5 might completely outsell the Switch OLED model, although you still would have to sell a ton to outsell the original Switch and the Switch Lite combined with the OLED model, even if you added digital versions. Meanwhile, we have seen an increasing trend here of Xbox Series S's and Xbox Series X's selling a lot better in Japan. Seems like once the word got out even a little bit, the Xboxes are starting to sell. PlayStation 4 is splitting here, and the Series S cheaper version is outselling the Series X more expensive version. But previously we've seen in double digits for Xbox Series X sales, and now we're seeing triple digits, so that is a massive improvement. And you're seeing quadruple digits for the cheaper Series S. Maybe that is an indication that the PlayStation 5 is still somewhat difficult to find, or it sells out very quickly when it is available. A game called Double Dragon Gaiden: Rise of the Dragons has an overview trailer. I don't feel like any of these characters really look like Double Dragon characters though. These are the protagonists of Double Dragon, and you can see there's a fairly different art style there on that thumbnail, whereas you have a much more cartoony big head mode. It's not even really in the chibi style, it's almost too big of a head for even that. And I know I have the blur on right now, so this could have been a little bit sharper in pixel graphics, but it's not really going to be that much sharper. And so they're introducing just more characters you can play as, I guess, as heroes outside of the standard heroes characters. This is one of those cases where it would have been really useful for Double Dragon to have a logo on this screenshot, or at least have the original characters on the side. If you're this also feels like they really are just letting you play as the bad guys or former bad guys of other Double Dragon games. What is this coming out for? Seemingly everything at some point. Yeah. If anything, it feels like this art style has taken the wrong message from River City Girls, where River City Girls had a very nice, polished, smooth edge anime art style. This has gone very pixely with big heads, and I don't even know why you need big heads in this style. Alright, I'm gonna have to mute 1 sec. Am I on? Yep. Anyways, like I was saying, I just don't see why you really need bigger heads in this kind of game. Wouldn't you need bigger limbs for the punching and kicking? Although it seems like there's just a lot of area of effect, hurt boxes and hit boxes on that aspect anyway, so any punch anywhere close seems to connect. But when you do have big head animation like this, what you are effectively admitting that to depict the level of detail you should be depicting, you should have been drawing the characters at a bigger scale in the first place. And like, while I have gotten fairly accustomed to the chibi art style and the moe art style and the kawaii art style of Japanese games, this art style has not been common enough that I would ever really, that I've gotten anywhere close to being used to it. Moving on, Avatar The Last Airbender Quest for Balance has been announced for all consoles and PC. Let's see, do we have a Switch link, Steam link? No. Should I show Avatar video? Probably not. We are very much in this weird situation where Avatar is still very popular. If anything, Avatar, the cartoon, is, I guess, maybe a few years ahead of what Harry Potter is. But there's not, to my knowledge, a lot going on with Avatar. I don't think there's any new cartoons or live action movies or anything like that happening, so this is almost certainly a license for a series that's pretty old at this point. Sword Art Online, Last Recollection trailers, story, weapons, and game original characters are out on Gematsu if you want to check this out. Most of these characters are not recognizable by me, but there is a problem in Sword Art Online where every time they go to a different MMO, the characters look different. So if you told me this with Kirito, the main protagonist of the first series of Sword Art Online, I'd believe you. I have no idea who this character is. That's probably the boss. And then any of these ladies could be a character from a previous Sword Art Online. This does look like this is more of a fantasy Sword Art Online as compared to the one Sword Art Online that was actually a gun shooting MMO, which didn't make the most sense for the title. Sword Art Online is an interesting title, but maybe not as descriptive as it should be. Backpacking adventure RPG called Albatross with a Z has been announced for consoles and PC. It's going to be on Steam in 2024. I don't know what the backpacking element changes much. Like most games, a character has some kind of inventory, whether it's an actual backpack or not. So I don't know if that really changes a lot. I don't know how much it changes if you were walking somewhere versus backpacking somewhere. You're holding more stuff on your back, yes, but even in the real world, I don't know if that changes the experience that much. It's probably for more hardcore people who want to sweat more when you're backpacking. That would be my guess. Armored Core 6 Fires of the Rubicon, or of Rubicon. I feel like you should say the there. As a gameplay footage trailer, if you want to check that out on Gematsu. Like Games with Gold, Darkwood, and I forget the other one. When the Past Was Around. We talked about that. They're still promoting Gamerscore on that too, which is interesting. That's a main sales point for Here, interesting, you have a update link. This is an interesting experiment. All I'm going to do is I'm going to see if these community posts could possibly be turned into a YouTube short. I feel like it would be hard to say that because you can see there's a lot of screenshots and a lot of text. So even if I could get this into a 1080 wide, 1920 tall screen, I would have to have the web page manage to somehow scroll down all the way to the bottom of this, which I'm not sure if this doesn't just go on forever. Yeah, I'd have to have it scroll all the way down to this point, which isn't really the bottom because this is the bottom. It would have to block out all these elements. It'd be a lot of extra work. Yeah, and I don't know how many people would actually read this. This is, if anything, the type of thing that would work much better if I had a text-to-speech program that could just turn it all into spoken text and people talked over it. That text-to-speech algorithm. Meanwhile, I guess the question is, should I make another YouTube? In this case, I definitely should make another YouTube short because it's a big name game, but generally, I would have to question whether it's worth making another YouTube short because of that. Scorn is coming to the PS5 alongside a physical edition. Scorn, not particularly amazingly well received by players, in my opinion. It was well reviewed, and I don't think there's really anything super wrong with the game. It's just, I don't think too many people really wanted to play it. The major complaint, I think, is that there's much more gun shooting in it than you would have thought it would have been, because it kind of felt like it was going to just be a puzzle game. I think the game may be a little short, too. But I might be wrong about that. We already talked about Wild Football, Wild Card Football. Turnip Boy Robs a Bank adds a Switch version. So this was previously announced for Xbox and PC. I assume this is a sequel to Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. And am I making YouTube shorts around games that are being announced? I guess you have to. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. We talked about that. Is this one that's even visually interesting enough to make a YouTube short around it? It barely is. I'll say yes, just to be generous. Cocoon launches September 29th. This was one of those games that was announced during the Steam Summer Game Fest. So I've already really made a YouTube short around it, but now we have a date. What's going to eventually happen is I'm going to end up with 2 videos, YouTube shorts, that are exactly the same title. And I'll probably have no way of ever figuring that out. There's too many videos on my YouTube channel, 10,000 plus, probably closer to 15,000. Yeah, you couldn't just cycle through it alphabetically or anything like that. Here's that walking simulator game. I'll be generous and put this on the follow list, but I'm not going to make a YouTube short around it. Annapurna Interactive is going to publish a new title from a Kyoto-based Morimitu Games. This almost feels like this is a Pokemon game. But I guess they don't even have a name for what this is. Annapurna Interactive and Uvala and Kita Takahashi announced 2AT for the Xbox One and Series and PC. Let's check out its Steam page, see if that's particularly interesting. It is, in a lot of ways, a bad time for Annapurna Interactive, Annapurna Interactive, I always mispronounce it, to making announcements. It seems like they're just late to the Summer Game Fest, and now they're hurting themselves with the Steam Summer Sale happening at the same time. Again, I guess I'll give this a follow, but this looks too simplistic of a game for me to really want to make a short around. Although maybe I'm doing too much curation at that point. The game Flock has a gameplay walkthrough video. If you want to check that on Gamatsu. Ghost Bike has been announced for the PS4 and 5, Xbox One Series, and PC. I really need to just rush through things here. Annapurna Interactive and Glass Revolver announce an action RPG called We Must Kill Monsters for PC. So, new announcements. This could be something, could be nothing. I don't have time to really investigate. Munduan is now available for the PS5 and Xbox Series, now being published under Annapurna Interactive, so I guess it was published by something else on Steam. It says on wishlist. Now, in this case, just because the publisher changed does not justify making a YouTube short. Nobody's going to care about that. Bounty Star: The Morose Tale of Graveyard Clim has been delayed to early 2024. Let's see if that's on the fall list. Pretty much just any new game being announced is being put on the fall list. So the way we're using the fall list is changing a little bit. It is on the PlayStation, Stray is. I thought it was a PlayStation exclusive. But then that page is struggling to load. This is both on the fall list and the wish list, so I'm going to take it off the fall list and not make a short around it. Thirsty Suitors launches November 2nd. This was an interesting game when it was announced, as kind of the idea of having to deal with your parents trying to set you up with dates. Your Indian parents. A game called Storyteller is coming to the iOS and Android on September 27th alongside a free update. It's coming to Android via Netflix. Storyteller first launched on Steam, but they don't have a link to it on Steam. So I'll have to investigate that further later. And then we talked about the Blade Runner being announced. Don't think there's really anything else to see. Screenshots are just screenshots from the trailer. Mercenary Wings: The False Phoenix and Mercenary Saga series is coming to PC in 2023. Seemingly quite a few Mercenaries games. Which that creates a weird situation, certainly, that one day we may just see YouTube shorts around mercenary games. So I'm going to do some curation here. I'm going to look at these games and I'm going to determine that none of them really look like they're quite good enough that I'd make a YouTube short any other day. So I'm going to just opt to not put them on the follow list. But you know what, I'll put one on the follow list and not make a YouTube short around it. Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising for the PS5 and PS4 online beta test is set for July 26th to the 30th according to Gamatsu. The Bridge Curse 2, The Extrication has a debut trailer. This Bridge Course game I've never heard of, but it looks like it's some kind of Korean horror game if I was to guess. Feel like there's also room here, since I'm now late, to try and figure out if there is a good reception around Bridge Course 1. Yeah, it is well received as a horror game, so I'll just go ahead and put this on the follow list, on the wish list, since it meets all the requirements. So that's one that slipped by me. Monster Hunter Rise shipments and digital sales have topped 13 million. Sunbreak expansion has topped 6 million, according to Komatsu. Needy Streamer Overload sales have topped 1 million. And Shinobi Non Grata for PS4 and Switch launches August 17th. It's currently available on PC. Let's check that out. It's on the fall list. Seems like it's positive enough to go on the wish list, but I'll give it a little bit more time. Anyways, Bancho Tactics launches August 10th. It's a delinquent strategy game for PC. Yeah, I do think it's going to come down to if something's on the fall list already, it's not going to get another YouTube short just because the date has been updated. Like, it's only going to get a YouTube short if new content has been added. And then R-Type Tactics 1 and 2 Cosmos has been delayed to 2024. Which also, in that case, a delay doesn't justify another YouTube short, but in this case it wasn't on the fall list, so I haven't made the original short. That's what being on the fall list is going to start to mean. And that brings us to GameDeveloper.com articles. Football Manager 2023 has become the most played entry in the franchise's history. Sega execs Microsoft's relationship is not leading towards acquisitions. Niantic cancels its project, closes LA offices, prioritizes Pokemon Go. Kickstarter pulls back on previously announced blockchain plans. Canada voices disapproval for a Microsoft Activision merger. And Larian says bringing Baldur's Gate 3 to the Xbox might require some, quote, compromises. Xbox went all in on ZeniMax and Bethesda exclusives in November of 2021. Phil Spencer caused a stir after deciding that all future ZeniMax titles would be platform exclusives during a November 2021 meeting, so that we've locked down to the exact spot where they've made that decision. And ZeniMax not 100% happy with that, but what can they do? They were acquired. That's what happens when you sell your soul and let yourself be acquired. Monster Hunter Rise has tapped 13 million sales worldwide. Now, at this point, this is where the auto blur should kick in. Is the auto blur working? No. Is the auto blur working? No. So, what I normally would do at this point would be to go through the fall list, clean up some fall list games, about 5 or 10, and then we'd look at all the new games. But I'm going to have to do that all off screen. Today's been a rough stream, a shorter stream at just 2 hours. Ideally, it would be nice if all streams went this long, but it does highlight that the only way I could really pull that off is if there was considerably less news coming out, which would probably mean I would have to stream every day, and I couldn't consistently do that, almost certainly. It would drive me nuts, particularly too, if I was playing that much Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'd have to also not play any Yu-Gi-Oh to get to a 2-hour stream. If I had just played Yu-Gi-Oh for an hour like normal, we'd already be at 3 hours. And so it would have been a 3 or 4 hour stream otherwise. And yeah, I am certainly open to suggestions on how to optimize this and make this a better experience without losing content, but it really just turns into a long experience no matter what, it seems like. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream, as it is. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.